Gurus back again. We are going to do another video today. Today is Wednesday, and I've decided that every Wednesday we're going to talk about NES games because in the middle of Wednesday is NES. So I just thought it would be kind of cool to go back, talk about my favorite era of video gaming. Just kind of because it was like, you had that like carefree time where like I was in school still, and just, I didn't have bills to pay for. I didn't have, the only thing I had was tests and such. And as much as of a pain in the butt they were, it was still just a good time. I had great parents that kind of just, as long as I was getting good grades and I wasn't getting in trouble, they kind of left me alone and didn't, mess with me too much. I still had chores to do and all that stuff, but they kind of let me go and do my thing with video games. But, determining that this is going to be the first NES topic that I'm going to do on a weekly basis from here on out, there's a lot of great NES games you could go over. You got your Marios, you got your Zeldas, you got your Metroid, you got your Kid Icarus, you got Contra, and all these other games, and I'll get to them at some point or another. But when I thought about the NES, I thought the one game that roped me in. A lot of people say Mario was it for them, and Mario was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed Mario. But for me, and I know a lot of my friends and family can tell you, I played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out a lot. I loved it. It was just, something about it. And it was, boxing was a big thing in my house. My grandfather used to box in the Marines. And then when he got out of the Marines, he boxed a little bit. And then my uncle from New York, he boxed. And so it was always in the family. It was always discussed. Whenever pay-per-views were on, we would always go to my grandfather's house or my grandparents' house. They had a bar, and we would watch, Mike Tyson fights or whatever. They would get all the pay-per-views, and we would watch them. Sugar Ray Leonard, all that stuff. So boxing being in my family and kind of like, so the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out game kind of drew me in. Like, it was just something about it. And not only that, it was just something totally different about the game. Up to that point, we had played boxing games in the past. When I had the Atari 2600, you had a black guy and a white guy, and they were kind of weird looking. They looked like a number 3 and a reverse number 3, and the head was in the middle, and you had the arms, and you push the buttons, and you'd have to time it right, and every hit you got a point, and it was just weird, and it was corny, and that was the extent of boxing. So when Mike Tyson's Punch-Out came along, it was like innovative at the time, puzzle-ish, because you'd have to figure out each fighter what their style was to beat them. And, you go through the first ranks, and Piston Honda was a little tough in the first ranks, but you had Glass Joe, and he was easy to blow through, and Von Kaiser was easy to go through, but Piston Honda was when you started to get a little, tough. And after you won that first title and you got that code that would always start you off from that point on, that's the thing, like, kids today, they don't comprehend how difficult video games used to be. On Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, you'd play from Glass Joe to Piston Honda, and you'd have to win all them fights. And if you lost 2 times, you had to start over again and go from the beginning. And then when you beat Piston Honda, you got a code. Then you had to go through your next series of fighters. And it was, even when you got to Mike Tyson, when you got to Tyson, if you didn't beat him, you went back. You went backwards. When you fought Glass Joe, or when you fought Von Kaiser, if you lost at Von Kaiser, you'd have to go back to Glass Joe, beat Glass Joe, go back to Von Kaiser. If you got the Piston Honda and you lost the Piston Honda, you go back to Von Kaiser, and so on and so forth. And that's the way it went throughout the ranks. Off the top of my head, I think it was like 16 different fighters, different styles, all that stuff. And this is a time when there was no internet, and there was no, like, all the kids were playing at the same time, and nobody could figure out how to beat King Hippo. And when the first person figured out how to beat King Hippo, the greatest thing was going to school the next day and telling everybody in the cafeteria, like, oh, you do this, you punch him in the mouth when he raises his hand, and he'll guard his hand, and then he opens up the stomach, you just blast him in the stomach, and then he falls down and he can't get back up. And and then Mr. Sandman was another one that was like, oh my god, and Bald Bull, with the bull charge, and how do you beat the bull charge, and there was little tricks to each guy, and once you figured it out, it made it easier the second time and the third time to the point. So anyway, with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, for me, I played that game, no lie, for a year and a half. Every day, about 2 to 3 hours a day. And because I wanted to beat Mike Tyson. And about 6 months into owning the game, a friend of mine had given me a code. And he said, this code will take you to Mike Tyson. It's 007-373-5963. I put that code in so many times, it's ingrained in my mind. To the point that, like, I can't remember phone numbers, but I can remember that code. And I put it in, had to put it in 20 to 50 times a day, every single day. Until I got to the point where I could beat Mike Tyson. And, beating Mike Tyson, again, the first time I beat him by decision. I think as tough as Tyson was, people didn't comprehend that, if you had a guy that was as hard to beat as Mike Tyson today in a video game, everybody would be screaming, it's impossible, I don't want to play it, I don't want to do it, and quit. But with Mike Tyson, it was a little different. In the first minute and 30 seconds, he'd throw these uppercuts, and if he hit you, you went down. So in theory, he could literally knock you out within the first 20, 30 seconds. And I don't think people got that upset about it, because in real life, that's what Mike Tyson was doing. He was knocking guys out left and right, and so it built the mystique, and it made it like, hey, this is Mike Tyson. Like, the guy is unbeatable, because at the time, before Evander Holyfield beat him, before Buster Douglas knocked him out, like, there was this mystique about Mike Tyson that, like, you couldn't beat him. He earned the nickname Baddest Man on the Planet for a reason. He just would go in the ring, devastate guys within 30 to 40 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever it was. So when you're playing the game, you didn't get that upset. You get frustrated. Don't get me wrong, you definitely get frustrated. But it was kind of like you were just so happy to be fighting Mike Tyson that when you got knocked out by him, you just said, okay, restart, go again. Took me a year and a half to finally beat him by decision. And once you got past that minute and 30-second flurry, it got a little bit easier. Once you got into the second round, it got a little bit easier. If you could get into that third round, you found yourself really taking it to him. You would need, I believe, 5,000 points to beat him by decision. So the first time I finally got to decision, I lost. I lost a few times. But then I realized, I found out that, like, if you got 5,000 points, you could beat Mike Tyson. And that was my gun. That was my target at first, was I just need to beat him. Because I know if I can beat him by decision, whatever, that's enough for me. It is what it is. Nobody else can beat him. And so I beat him by decision. I got so excited. I said I want to do it again. I beat him by decision again. Third time I went, I TKO'd him. And I flipped out. Like, you would think that I just won the lottery for $10 million. I lost it. I was screaming. I was flipping out. I looked around. There was nobody there. There was nobody at the house. Again, when you took a picture or something with a camera, it took weeks to develop the film. Or days. It wasn't like a matter, and for me as a kid it took weeks, because it was a matter of convincing my mom to take me to the store, to pay for the film to get developed, if she didn't kick my ass for stealing her camera and taking a picture as it was, because, that was wasted film, It wasn't easy to take pictures of the TV, because if you didn't take it in the right lighting, you wouldn't get the picture properly, it would blur out. It was a mess. It was a mess of a time. It's not like today. Like, today you turn on, it's true. Today you turn on the internet and you go to YouTube and you could type in beat Mike Tyson. And I promise you, you'll find 50 to 100 videos of guys just beating Mike Tyson at will, no big deal. But at the time, you got to think, we're talking 88, 89, somewhere in that area. I think I'm in like 8th grade, maybe freshman in high school, something like that. So I beat Mike Tyson. I knock him out. Nobody's around. So I run down my cousin's house, and like, you see me now. There's no running today, trust me. But back in the day, I was a little bit more thin. You know, I could run. I played baseball. I played sports, and you know, so I ran down to my cousin's house and I knocked on the door, and my cousins come to the door, and I said, I just beat Mike Tyson. No way, you're full of crap. No, really, I beat Mike Tyson. I'll show you. I go in the bedroom. I beat him by decision, and they're like in awe. Oh my God, you know. So my one cousin runs out and grabs my uncle, who was a big boxing fan at the time, and he even tried to fight Mike Tyson and would get knocked out, but he would laugh and he thought it was cool. And he tells him, Bobby just knocked out, or didn't. Bobby just beat Mike Tyson. And my uncle goes, no way. And he goes, I gotta see this. So he comes in the room and goes, show me. So I go and I play, and I beat him again by decision. So my uncle turns to me and goes, you didn't beat him. You gotta knock him out. You don't win the title by decision. You gotta beat the champion. Like, just basically taking everything that I was like high hopes and just crushing them. And now I know that I TKO'd him like 20 minutes earlier, but it's different now. I got the people around me and the pressure. So I got so aggravated that I said restart it. And I went after Tyson, and I really, I beat him bad. I TKO'd him in the second round. He barely touched me at all. And when I beat him, you would think that we won the Super Bowl. Like, we just flipped out, spazzed out, and everybody was just, through the roof, like, flipping out. Again, now I go to school, and I tell my friends, hey, man, I beat Mike Tyson the other day. No, you didn't. That's nonsense. Because nobody ever did it. It was unheard of. Everybody knew how difficult it was to beat Mike Tyson. And I remember telling a couple of kids, and they didn't believe me. And then they'd come to my house, and they would watch. I would have to play Mike Tyson's Punch Out, fight Tyson, and beat him for them to believe it. So I played every day after that, a couple times a day, just fighting Mike Tyson to beat him, just because friends would want to see it, or whatever, just because I liked it and I enjoyed it. So a year goes by from that point when I knock him out, and I'm playing whatever it was at the time. I don't even know what game I was playing at the time, but I hear the doorbell ring, and it was a Saturday afternoon. My mom's home, and next thing I know, she comes to my bedroom door, knocks, and she goes, "There's some kid out there. He says he's friends with you. He wants to talk to you." So I said, "Okay." I don't know. I go to the front door, and it's one of my friends, Charles, and he's standing there with another kid who I've never met him before. I don't know who he is, and I can't, to this day, I can't remember his name. We're just going to call him Johnny, just for argument's sake. I don't know. But Charles turns around and goes, "This is Johnny. He's my cousin. I told him that you could beat Mike Tyson." And I'm like, "What?" So I started laughing. I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Nah, man. I told him you could beat Mike Tyson. You gotta beat Mike Tyson." I go, "Why?" He goes, "I bet him. I bet him $20 that you could knock him out." And I go, "Charles, man, that was a year ago. Like, the last time I beat him was maybe, a month ago. I'll try." And he goes, "Well, let's go." So we go in the bedroom, turn it on, and start the game up, and I get knocked down, like, within a couple seconds. And Johnny starts laughing, and he's like, "You're going to pay me $20, whatever." And I said, no, hold on. And I get back up, and I proceed to just never get touched again. I just knocked him out again and beat him, and it was kind of cool that, like, you would go through that. Like, people would come over to watch you do things, because and that's where I think Nintendo strived, and that's where, for Nintendo fans from back in the day, like, when you're not able to play on the internet and such, what they call local multiplayer now, it's basically sitting on your couch, hanging out with your buddies and playing, and a lot of people did that. And I think we're to the point now where we're just kind of disconnected from that, where a lot of people just play online today, and it's not the same as it was. Back then was a different time. But to me, that was my fondest memory, just because that was so difficult to do, and to finally do it just felt so good. And so it was one of my fondest memories on the NES. You know, as far as like my favorite fighter to fight against, Mr. Sandman, just because I felt like when I was beating Mike Tyson, there was a time where I couldn't beat Mr. Sandman every time, but I could beat Mike Tyson every time. And Mr. Sandman was just one of those characters that just, he was a rarity too, because when you started and you worked up the ranks, you didn't fight him. You had to lose to Super Macho Man and get pushed back down, and when you went down, then you fought Mr. Sandman. So you didn't always see him every fight. And so that was pretty much it. I mean, years later, they basically pulled Mike Tyson out, and I don't know whether, you know, there's different stories. Part of it was because the rape charges that came against Mike Tyson, the rape conviction, whether Nintendo pulled him out because of that reason, or because the contract was just up. I mean, a lot of people don't recognize that or think that, and at that point, they pulled the Mike Tyson character out and put in Mr. Dream, which is basically the same guy. It's the same character. It's just a white guy and a little bit of a different haircut or whatever. But when you look at the characters and they fight, their styles are identical, and they look very similar. Years later, on the Super NES, Super Punch-Out came out. It just wasn't the same feel as with Little Mac. Then years later on the Wii, they came out with another Punch-Out, and it was basically beautiful graphics. They redid the whole thing, same feel, but, you know, there's just something different about that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I don't know what it was. It was, you know, I think everything just kind of went together at the same time, you know, between the mystique of Tyson knocking people out to just how difficult he was in the game. Just made it so magical at the time, and you know, the commentary between, you know, when you go between rounds, the comments back and forth between the fighters and you know, Doc talking to you in your corner. They say it's one of the most racist games ever. There's some racial stuff in it, not so much as racial as in slurs and such, but the stereotypes. Which, you know, it is what it is, you know, but it's, you look back and it's funny, you know, it's just like, wow, how did they get away with some of this stuff back then, you know? Today you would have people flipping out over it. Ultimately, I would love to see Nintendo either just redo the game with a new flair to it, but I would just love for them to bring Mike Tyson back, just because it would just be kind of cool. If they did a new Punch-Out for the Wii U and basically just implemented Mike Tyson at the end, I would love it. I think a lot of people would love it. It would be just kind of cool. I would like to see more new fighters than they had in the Wii version. The Wii version had a lot of old rehashes. There was only a couple of new fighters. The cool thing about the Wii edition was they did kind of pull some fighters from the Super Nintendo era. Bear Hugger and the Bruisers, I think Rick and Nick Bruiser, they came back. So that was kind of cool to see some of those guys brought back. But the Super NES one, I think because I was so good at Punch-Out that by the time the Super Nintendo came out, I blew through that game. It didn't take me nowhere near as long to beat. But, you know, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out will always hold a special place in my heart. There was little ticks and tells on everybody that would give away on what they were going to do. People didn't realize Bald Bull, but there was a photographer in the front row that, like, when it was time to punch for him, when he did his bull charge, the flash of the camera would go off on the photographer. Or, you know, Piston Honda, when he was going to make a move or a jab, he would, like, wink his eyes, or Tyson, his body would flash a little bit when you got through the uppercuts and he would do jabs. Before he would throw a jab, he'd wink, and whatever eye he winked at was that a left or a right was coming at you. So that's my memories of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I'm curious to find out what you guys think about the game. What did you love about it? What did you hate about it? Who was your favorite fighters? What was your most difficult fighter to get through? Definitely leave a comment down below. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. That's it for now. Thank you guys for watching. Please share the video with your friends. Let everybody know about it. Follow me at Twitter at The Geek Gurus. I'm also on Instagram at The Geek Gurus. You can like my Facebook page, facebook.com/The Geek Gurus. That's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. Peace, mother.